Good day everyone, I'm Richard Ibarrios and today I will be discussing the water cycle. Water is one of the most important resources on earth. We use it for drinking, farming, cleaning, and many other daily activities. But have you ever wondered where water goes after it rains? Or how clouds are formed in the sky? All of these processes are explained by something called the water cycle, which shows how water continuously moves around our planet. Before we start discussing the topic, let us first look at our objectives. By the end of this presentation, we should be able to 1. Explain what the water cycle is. 2. Identify the different processes involved. And lastly, 3. Understand why the water cycle is important for life on Earth. Now that we know our goals, let us begin by understanding what the water cycle actually is. The water cycle is the continuous movement of water on Earth. Water moves between the oceans, land, and the atmosphere in a repeating cycle. This process never really stops. Water simply changes form and moves from one place to another. The main source of energy that drives this cycle is the heat from the sun, while the gravity helps bring the water back down to the Earth's surface. Now, let us look at the different processes that make up the water cycle, starting with evaporation. Evaporation happens when a liquid water turns into water vapor, which is a gas. This occurs when the sun heats water in oceans, lakes, rivers, and other bodies of water. As the water warms up, it changes into vapor and rises into the atmosphere. However, evaporation is not the only way water enters the atmosphere. Plants also play an important role through a process called transpiration. Transpiration is the process where plants release water vapor into the air. Plants absorb water from the soil through their roots. Some of this water is used by the plant, but a portion of it escapes through a tiny openings in their leaves. Because this process releases water into the air, transpiration is sometimes called plant evaporation. Once water vaporizes into the atmosphere through evaporation and transpiration, the next process begins, which is condensation. Condensation occurs when water vapor cools down and changes back into liquid water. As warm air rises higher into the atmosphere, the temperature becomes cooler. Because of this cooling, the water vapor turns into tiny droplets of liquid water. These droplets gather together to form clouds. When enough water droplets collect in the clouds, they eventually fall back to the earth through a process known as precipitation. Precipitation happens when the droplets or the water droplets in clouds becomes too heavy to stay in the air. As a result, the water falls back to the Earth's surface. Precipitation can occur in different forms, such as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. This process is important because it returns water from the atmosphere back to the land and bodies of water. After precipitation reaches the ground, the water continues moving through a cycle. One way that water moves after precipitation is through runoff. Runoff happens when water flows over the surface of the land and moves into rivers, lakes, and eventually the ocean. This usually happens when the ground cannot absorb all the water, especially during heavy rainfall. However, not all water flows across the surface. Some of it actually moves into the ground through a process called infiltration. Infiltration occurs when water soaks into the into the soil and moves underground. This water becomes groundwater, which is stored beneath the earth's surface in soil and rocks. Groundwater is very important because it supplies water for plants, wells, and drinking water sources. Eventually, this groundwater may flow into rivers or oceans and the cycles begin again. To conclude, the water cycle is a continuous and essential process that supports life on Earth. It helps distribute water around the planet, provides fresh water for plants, animals, and humans, and maintains the balance of ecosystem. Without the water cycle, Earth would not have the water needed to sustain life. Thank you for listening.